Over the last several months, I've shared with you submissions I've made both directly to PSA and also through GameStop's drop-off service. But today, I'm going to show you an in-depth price analysis, breakdown, and comparison for both TCG and sports cards bulk submissions. I'm going to be discussing and sharing data presented in a way that I haven't seen on YouTube anywhere. So stick with me, we've got some work to do. Hey, how's it going YouTube? It's Ian with Good Form Sports Cards, back with another video. Back from a week off. Apologies to those that tune in every week. If you noticed there was no video last week, I'm sorry for that. Been working on this video, which took quite a bit of research and prep work, as well as a few others, and I just didn't want to push them out without giving it the proper amount of work and polish. So I'm hoping that work shines through here and you enjoy the video. For the channel regulars that are subscribed and with me every week, thank you again so much. I'm always humbled and appreciate any and all time you give the channel. For the more casual viewer that has maybe seen my videos once or twice, or maybe if you're new to the channel, this is the first video you've seen, I'm hoping this video will earn your subscription. This video took some tedious work and research to put together. Just a quick overview of what we'll be covering. Today I'm going to directly compare the cost on bulk orders submitted through PSA's direct membership versus GameStop's drop-off grading service. Now when you look on their website, you may just see PSA is typically $1 less than GameStop, and you're thinking, well, it's pretty obvious which one is cheaper and more cost effective. It really just comes down to, do you physically want to do it yourself, or do you want to physically drive to GameStop and have them do it for you? But it's not quite that simple. So I've got a lot of data, some charts, graphs, stuff where I can compare all of this and hopefully help give you some more information to decide which you want to use in which scenario. Now before we get into all the data and all that stuff, I've got some preliminary items to go over to lay down the groundwork. All right, and here's a slide comparing some of the preliminaries that we'll need to know before going into the charts and graphs, just to establish some of the constants and to show you where I came up with some of the numbers that you'll see. Okay, currently at PSA for bulk submissions, it's $21.99 a sports card, $18.99 for a TCG card. Now, I should already have a screenshot showing this from their website. GameStop is a little different. Now, they are $21.99 for sports card as well, and $19.99 for a TCG card. Now, this will make a difference, and I'll explain a little bit here, but I don't want to go too much into the weeds. Typically, GameStop has always been $1 more, which is reflective with the TCG price. Now, with the sports cards, currently, they're $21.99. Now, I don't know if that's an error or if this was on purpose, which we'll discuss later, but currently, the price is the same whether you bulk submit through PSA Direct or GameStop. So knowing that data, let's move forward. Now I'm assuming 24 cents per card of materials. And what the materials are is a card saver, which I think was about 13 cents, a penny sleeve, which is like 2 cents, and the other 9 cents was some other costs that I include with packaging, shipping, inspecting, prepping. So it's going to be like the microfiber cloth to wipe down your chromium cards, some of the packaging materials that I would use when shipping to PSA, which wouldn't necessarily apply to GameStop, but it's pretty apples to apples. I mean, it's a difference of maybe a few cents, very, very minimal, but that is the extra cost per card. So we want to make this as accurate as possible, so it's not just what they're charging, but the entire amount of cost that's in it. You do have to prep the cards the same for PSA Direct as you do for GameStop. One feature I can mention that GameStop does is if you don't have those materials, you could actually bring your cards in raw, like completely raw, and they will sell you the materials to sleeve and add to a card saver at the store level. And here's where things start to kind of take a fork in the road. To submit for bulk pricing with PSA, you have to have a 20 card minimum. To submit at GameStop, that is your price, whether you submit one card or you submit 100 cards. It's $21.99 a card or $19.99 for TCG. So you can already see where there may be an advantage here. Here's yet another area where it differs. Shipping with PSA increases per additional card. So every card that you add in, it's going to go up a small incremental amount. I'll explain that when we get to those graphs. I'll show you how much it is and what some of the tiers are where it significantly bumps up or where it bumps up smaller amounts. GameStop is flat shipping, $9.99. And if you're a GameStop Pro member, you save $5 on shipping and it's $4.99 for Pro. So you can see there's a lot of potential savings there if we know that PSA is constantly getting more expensive as the cards go up and GameStop starts with a flat rate on the first card and never increases. You can see once GameStop gets a lead, it'd be very, very tough to run them down. And yet another item that is similar but not the same, $500 max insured value per card on PSA Direct Bulk, and it's also $500 max insured value for GameStop. So earlier when I mentioned you could submit 1, 2, 3, 4 cards, whatever, at the same rate, that is true. Just don't try to get cute and think you could submit your $2,000 cards and bypass the upcharge. You can't. So keep that in mind. Now, this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with cost, but it can if you're looking at like how quick you want to turn things and help your days in the cash cycle with your card business and stuff like that. PSA has finally admitted, and GameStop has updated their website to show that GameStop is faster. Before, they just had 65 days on one and the other, and they didn't really tell you. And that's why I raced them and found that GameStop was substantially faster, to where I almost had 2 orders completed in the time it took me to do 1 with PSA Direct. Without going down that rabbit hole too many more times, 65 business days for PSA Direct Bulk, 50 business day turnaround for GameStop. So speaking of days in the cash cycle, here's potentially the biggest difference between the two, and probably the most important to some of you. When you use PSA Direct, you pay when your grades pop. So you may have waited a long time, but your money isn't tied up that long. Basically, your money's tied up once your grades pop, and that's maybe a few days, if that. Versus GameStop, you are going to pay at the store up front, and that money is going to be tied up for 50 business days. All right, so these are the constants and the conditions we're up against. So let's look at some data comparing PSA's direct bulk pricing to GameStop's drop-off service pricing for sports cards. So here I've got a graph. Along the x-axis is the number of cards submitted. You can see it starts at 1, goes to 101, and the y-axis is the total cost. And so for every card that you advance along the x-axis, it's adding the total cost of grading, the total cost of materials, and the total cost of shipping. Now, since the shipping with GameStop is fixed, we can see the black GameStop line here is steady. It just goes up the grading cost and the cost of materials. It doesn't move around. PSA, you can see it starts along the bottom, and the reason for this is that I'm not able to submit bulk until we get to card 20. So I know what the grading cost would be, but there is no shipping cost. I can't prorate that out. But I will tell you, to get this data, I started a submission and just kept changing the quantity by 1 every time and logging the change in shipping cost. And what I noticed from card to card is it is usually about 39 cents until you reach certain thresholds, where you can see it bumps right here, you can see it bumps again right here, and it bumps massively right here. Now, initially, I thought that might be related to the insured value, so I played around with that. It didn't really adjust the shipping cost at all. What I did notice, it was right at the 25 card mark. Once you go to 26, it went up. Then after 50 to 51, it went up. And then right here at 100 to 101, it jumps. And what I think is causing that is it's the size of PSA's boxes they use for packaging. I think they have the little square one that holds 25. So when you exceed that, they know they're going to have to go to a larger package. And that's why this jumps right here. Same thing with 50. That's when you have 2 of these 25s are full. It's no longer going to suffice. They have to go to a larger box, which it spikes again. Then here is when you have 2 of those 50 counts full, and it really jumps because you're going to have to go with possibly 2 boxes if they don't have anything beyond that, or they have an even larger box. So we'll go into that data more in depth, but it's kind of hard to follow this because it's so close. The data is so dialed in at this point. The lines, you can't really tell the separation. It looks like the cost isn't really that bad, but you can see over here with the y-axis, the cost is actually in chunks of $500 a piece. So you're getting up here where the total submission's up over $2,000. This gap is a little more than you'd think it is. So I'm going to bring you the same slide, but backed away to just the 1 through 50. And here you get a little tighter look at the degrees of separation. You can see right here at the 25 to 26 how that spikes a little bit. And then again up here from 50 to 51, it continues to separate. And what the graphs are telling us initially is that the cost to go PSA Direct seems to be more expensive across the board the entire way. So before we move on, let's take a look at an even closer part of the graph where we focus on this early part. You can see initially what the actual degree of separation is. And here's an even closer section of that initial graph. This is just cards 1 through 30. And you can see up here, I've got the numbers in here with it being a little closer. You can see what the cumulative cost is for GameStop going up here 1 through 30. And then you can also see PSA. So you can see that it's relatively close here. There's about a $40 separation, and that is what the initial shipping cost is. It's about $45 once you get to 20 cards. It is quite a bit to ship 20 cards, but that is also with insurance and tracking and all that good stuff. So GameStop has quite an advantage just starting you off here with the flat shipping. It's a little expensive at first if you just do a few cards, but after you get a few in, you're substantially cheaper in regards to the grading and shipping. Where you can see PSA, it's trucking along, it's starting to get a little bit ever so slightly closer, and then as soon as that happens, you hit that 26 card and you spike and you just keep going. So on the surface, it does appear that grading sports cards in bulk with GameStop is the cheapest overall option, regardless if you're grading 1 or 100 cards. But there is some more information to share regarding that at the end of the video that you'll definitely want to see. Before we go to that, let's compare the TCG pricing. So this should look very similar to the first sports card graph we saw, but now it is the TCG bulk comparison. You can see these lines are very, very close. And you can see the same sort of pattern at the 26, the 50, and the 100 cards, where PSA has little jumps in there. But you can see that the PSA line does work towards the GameStop line and eventually catch up to it, and then it kind of pulls away again as the different threshold is reached. So here you got a much tighter line where the cost difference isn't so much. So why is that? Why do we see this line so tight but the sports card had such separation? Well, if you remember at the initial slide before we got into the graphs, it showed that the pricing between GameStop and PSA Direct were $21.99 a card for the sports cards, but for the TCG there was $1 difference. It was $1 more to submit through GameStop, which does allow PSA to run them down. Because even increasing at that rate of 39 cents per card that you add, you're only adding 39 cents for each PSA card, but you're adding $1 more for every GameStop card. So eventually those two are going to run into each other, which we saw a couple times here. So when it comes to bulk submitting TCG cards, if you're concerned about only cost, there are a few scenarios and a few amounts where it might make more sense for you to go direct with PSA. So let's look at the same graphs as we did with the sports cards a little closer. Let's look at a cutaway of this graph of how it looks 0 to 50. Okay, so here's a 0 to 50 cutaway, and again, comparing to the sports card comparison, you can see these lines are much tighter, much tighter. Very, very close. They get to where they're almost touching, and then it continues to just push away as the new shipping thresholds are reached. But whereas in the sports cards, it's probably in the $1 to $3 difference per card. Here, the difference is probably less than $1. It's very, very close. So let's take an even tighter look at this graph showing only 0 to 30 cards submitted. Okay, and here we have an even tighter view on this. You can see I left the numbers in on this one as well because they display a little better when there's a lot fewer cards. And look at the difference in the cost here. So we've got about $531 here to $562. So you have about a $30 difference in the 26-27 card range. So you're looking at about $1 a card right as it hits the new threshold. And that's about the maximum the two lines are separated from each other. Then it starts to just continue to get closer and closer and closer. But it still looks like initially, at least with the TCG bulk along with the sports card bulk, that GameStop makes the most sense from a cost standpoint, at least for the typical bulk shipments that you would see. Until you get into the at least super large to me, you're getting into the 75 plus bulk submissions. Then you're starting to really get the numbers close together, and you'll really want to know this data to know which was going to make the most sense for you. Next, I'm going to show you a series of graphs that is comparing the TCG and sports card cost difference per card. Now, we were able to see it a little bit in those graphs, but this is essentially graphing out those gaps we saw. And I'll be able to explain to you a little bit about what it means. These are kind of wacky looking graphs, but along the bottom here is we have the number of cards submitted, again, like we're used to, so it's 1 to 101, and the y-axis is the cost difference. And what this is, what is the difference in cost once you get to the 20th card? All right, so for TCG, the difference is $1.02. Kind of following me here? And it's $2.02 for the sports cards. And you'll notice these lines follow each other exact, and they're exactly $1 off. The reason for that is because, again, it's $21.99 per card for PSA and GameStop for sports cards, but there's $1 difference in the TCG, $18.99 to $19.99. So this is the dollar gap you're seeing between the two, and you can see where the cost difference is really much less significant per card with the TCG because of that dollar difference. And you can see here, once you get to card 26, that spike in shipping is affecting this again. It's getting that per cost difference. You can see it starts to work its way back down. right here where it goes from 50 to 51, you're going to see that shipping with PSA kick in, and it's going to give you that spike again. And then here we go back from 50 to 100, it drives back down, and your cost for TCG actually, you can see, goes in the negative, which means that it's actually more expensive in this range here to submit with GameStop. So that's the first time we've actually seen that laid out. And then of course, once you get to 101, the shipping kicks in and there's a little difference, but you're really talking some pretty insignificant amounts here the whole way. I mean, there's a difference, but it's less than $1 a card except for here early on. So the difference is very, very small, 13 cents. So a decision like this is really not going to affect it. It's going to come down to some other factors with TCG cards, and it's going to come down to really what you want in your services. So before we move on and talk about some of that, let's look at the cutaways that we've been looking at a little bit closer. And we'll be able to fly through those because this graph tells you quite a bit. And keeping things consistent, here's what the graphs look like for cards 1 through 55. And you can see the spike here up close a little bit about what it looks like. Very, very similar to what the previous graph looked like. We just get a closer look at it, get to see all the numbers here. Makes the gap look a little bit more significant with the sports cards versus the TCG cards, but it is important to look at it in this manner because a lot of the bulk submissions that people do are 50 cards or less. So usually mine are in the 25 to 30 range. So before we move on to some of the factors you'd want to consider when making your final decision, let's go look at this one last slide and see what the cutaway looks like in the 1 to 30s. And here we are in the 1 to 30s. Again, very similar to the previous two graphs. We just get a closer look at it, and this is what it looks like up close. Don't want to spend too much time on it really. It is the last graph of the video, so there is that as a plus, but we've had a chance to compare the sports cards, we've had a chance to compare the TCG cards, and compare the cost difference per card when using each service. So let's look at one last slide and go over some things that you need to consider, and also some things that I learned while making this video that I'll be implementing in future submissions. So during the research and analysis it took while making this video, I had some thoughts and takeaways to share with you to help all of you make an informed decision on which service makes the most sense for you, submitting direct PSA with your membership or utilizing GameStop's drop-off service. So the first takeaway is when using PSA Direct for your submissions, build bulk submissions to the sizes just before the shipping jumps to the next tier. Now we saw that where the cost goes up, it would make no sense for me to send a 26 card submission because for that 26 card, I'm paying an extra, I believe it was $15 or something like that. It's crazy, because you're going just outside what I believe is their stock packaging. My recommendation when using PSA for your bulk submissions would be to submit in sizes of 25, 50, or 100. So if you're at 26 or even 30, I would probably back that off to 25, send it in to keep your per card cost as low as possible, and then try to either build up a second 25 card submission to send afterwards, or if you have enough cards and you're in the 26 plus and even in the 30s, maybe you hold on to that a little bit, get up to the 50 count, and then submit that. That's what I would do to take advantage to keep your costs down as low as possible. Now remember, there are ways to drive the PSA cost down. I'm sure there's people watching this video that are thinking, well, Ian, I could just use their eBay auction services, or I could use the offer program and never bring the cards home. This video is really comparing apples to apples. If you wanted to submit cards, maybe not for resale, but for your collection, you need them in your hands. So how do you submit them from your home and get them back in your home as economically as possible? That's really the point of the video. Next takeaway, insured value didn't seem to affect shipping costs when I was playing around with it, gathering the data from the PSA side. So my advice would be always take the max. Why go in there and put 100 if it's a cheaper card and you know it's a cheaper card? Just put the 500 in there. Get yourself the max value you can. It's not affecting your shipping home. And if something were to happen, it should ensure that you're going to get max value back for your card. Make sure to just put it in there. It doesn't hurt anything. Get yourself the most bang for your buck. Submitting with PSA directly does give you access to PSA offers and also the eBay auctions. Now, is this coming eventually for GameStop? I don't know. I would imagine it probably is. I would imagine when your cards pop at GameStop, there will be some integration with the stuff that PSA already has built into their own website where you'll be able to accept offers and not have to have your card shipped back to GameStop. You'll be able to potentially submit it to auction. GameStop already does make you offers on site when you pick your cards up for some of them. I believe they have to be grades 9 or 10 and be desired by them or wherever they're selling them. So there are some cards, if you're grading really obscure stuff, they're not going to make you offers. But if you're doing stuff that is pretty liquid, like Luka Doncic, Juju Watkins, people like that, I've had really strong offers at the store, to be honest with you. I just took them home really to complete my videos. I should have probably just took the money and updated you here. There are perks to using PSA Direct beyond just the price. This is probably the biggest and most important difference to me. Paying up front versus paying at the end. It matters. Now, as mentioned at the beginning of the video, you pay when your cards pop with PSA. So you might wait longer, you might even spend a couple dollars more, but your money is not tied up for months. You could submit through GameStop and have it cost you less and it could turn quicker, but your money's going to be tied up 50 business days, guaranteed. You're going to pay when you drop your cards. So for those that like to remain really liquid and not tie their money up for long periods of time, submitting direct to PSA is going to make more sense, even if it costs you a little bit. Some people are willing to just say, I'll spend the extra $30 on this bulk submission to not have my money tied up. Simple as that. That to me is the biggest difference maker. That is why I continue to use PSA Direct, because I can have 5, 6, 7 submissions sitting out there and I don't pay until they pop. Period. So it allows me to really get a lot of cards in the cycle. I could do that with GameStop, and I mean, either way, you're eventually going to pay. To get 5, 6, 7 bulk orders in with GameStop, and you pay all of them up front, and then you sit there and wait until you can start making your money back. It's a little harder to do that. So hopefully PSA never changes that. They're really the only grading company that I know of that does that, and that is to me a huge plus for them. CGC charges you, I believe, when they get the card. SGC charges you like when you submit, like they'll make you pay before you get your paperwork and all that stuff, which is, it's nice when they're able to turn the cards fast. It's something like I was willing to pay for that service, but now that they got so slow, I've really kind of just stopped using them. Like, they were there for speed for me, cost and speed, but when that's not there, I'm just willing to just pay for PSA and wait. So that's a different video. We're not going to go too far into that rabbit hole. So this we already talked about when looking at the per card comparisons, but you don't actually save money at all using PSA Direct until doing about a 96 card submission. That's where it actually goes past zero into being more favorable to PSA. So if you're looking at just straight up cost, that is it. You don't care about turn time. You don't care about anything else. You just want to spend the least amount of money grading to get your cards back. If you're sending a bulk order less than 96 cards, it is GameStop 100%. It might only be a few bucks, but the data doesn't lie. If you submit that way to GameStop, the first 95 cards, say 1 to 95 cards, are going to be cheaper with GameStop and faster. Speaking of faster, that's the next takeaway. GameStop is 15 days faster than PSA, and PSA is finally honest about it. Before, they had 65 on both sites. We all had an idea GameStop was faster. That was a whole idea. My video was like I was going to test that myth. It's no longer a myth. They just are finally honest about it. I think enough people had pointed that out, and they just said, let's get the real times on there, or I don't know. But for some reason, they've got that updated now, and it is confirmed GameStop is a few weeks faster than submitting it direct to PSA, which is kind of wild to me, really. It's kind of weird that you can add a third-party vendor and your processes are like more streamlined. With all that being said, the PSA membership is still worth it. With your PSA membership, you get Card Ladder for a year. So as long as you're paying for your PSA membership, you're getting Card Ladder, which to me is awesome. I use it all the time. That said, the GameStop Pro membership is also worth it. You'll save on shipping, which I showed at the very first slide. It's $9.99 flat, but if you're a Pro member, you get $5 off and it's $4.99 flat. So $4.99 shipping for unlimited amount of cards that you submit is a great price. You also get a monthly voucher, which is redeemed for $5. I don't think you can use that towards grading, but you can also use that towards your shipping. So if you have a Pro membership and a $5 voucher, you are getting free shipping. There are all kinds of other store and site savings. You get trade-in, boosts, all good stuff. So whatever one you want to member up with, one or both, I would recommend it for sure. It's definitely worth it. Now this here, I'm not sure what to make of it, so I am going to share all of my thoughts on it. An error/delay on GameStop, or is this a design price match by PSA on the sports card? Since this program rolled out, there's always been a dollar difference. It's always been like whatever PSA's price is, GameStop's $1 more. Now, recently, PSA raised their price from bulk to $21.99. Now, I don't know if GameStop just hasn't updated their website yet, or if they're going to stay at $21.99 and have the same price as PSA. It would be weird because it almost seems like PSA is maybe testing a theory here, which I believe they could be. If they're already able to do GameStop quicker, there's something with that process that they really, really like. Now, I don't know if it is the way that GameStop submits their cards. They put these individual labels on and kind of scan them in, and I don't know if it gets it through the front end quicker, maybe, or if PSA likes the back end of it where they just drop ship a cluster of cards to GameStop and let them deal with it. Now, I'm not really sure what that looks like between PSA and GameStop once the cards leave PSA. I don't know if PSA is shipping them to each individual store. I'm not sure if they're going to GameStop to then be sorted. And GameStop would have already had a network of trucks and shipping and distribution built out already. So maybe using that, whatever GameStop is using as a distributor, is beneficial to PSA in some way. It makes the process easier, it makes it cheaper, maybe both. I'm not really sure, but I kind of feel like they're testing this out. Maybe PSA is like, we don't really care about owning the front end, and we really don't care about owning distribution and logistics. We just want to grade and sell cards. So all that other stuff, maybe they're like, hey, we're fine pimping out all this stuff to other vendors. And there could even be more beyond that. Like, what happens if there is a damaged card that you pick up from GameStop? I'm told it's insured and that they'll take care of it, and they probably will. But now those customer service tickets and stuff are not going to PSA. You're actually dealing with it at the store level with GameStop. So all of that might be really, really lucrative to PSA. That could be what they're doing here. They might be testing out the pricing to see if they don't have that dollar difference, if it's apples to apples between the two, will they be able to route more people to GameStop? And if they can get that balance a little bit more divided than it currently is, will that make them faster? Will it make them better? Of course, what they care about most, will it make them more profitable? I think it's somewhere along there. It could just be a simple oversight where all of a sudden they're going to update their website and that dollar difference is back. But there is a part of me that wonders if they're trying that out in the sports cards. I'm not sure why they wouldn't on the TCG cards, because the volume is like through the freaking roof right there, and that seems to be what's causing the backup. So I'm shocked that they wouldn't have tested it there. But again, they have people in their data analytics team that are far, far better than me and looking at stuff much more advanced than I'm able to even have access to. So they definitely know what they're doing, but that's something to think about. Will we see more and more price breaks on the GameStop side to try to route the lower end bulk submitters there and keep the stuff going directly to PSA, the more high end, smaller orders, stuff that they can turn a little quicker? So as we wrap this up, you have to ask yourself, what level of control do you want? It's really what it comes down to. If you don't mind turning your cards over to the store and letting them package and ship it and handle all that stuff, GameStop probably really makes sense for you because the cost is obviously advantageous. For me, I like to have the most control of my cards as possible. I don't trust that everybody knows how to do their job or that they care as much about their job as I do. I think a lot of people do, but you only need to find one careless person in the chain to cause a problem for you. And that's just something where if I can eliminate my risk exposure, I'm going to do it. So by me just going direct to PSA, having my own tracking number, being able to just control it from my side is worth that smaller per card cost. And again, you combine that with not paying until your cards pop, it just using PSA directly is still best for me. There are plenty of advantages to using GameStop for sure. So it really comes down to what are the most important items to you as a collector, investor, flipper, kind of tying hand in hand with how much control you want. What items in the process do you hold most valuable? So what I mean by that is somewhat of what I already touched on, but if it's most valuable for you to have a lot of visibility on the process, doing it yourself is going to give you that. You're going to be able to track your shipment. You're going to be able to track the dashboard and get pretty good updates. GameStop's platform has gotten better. You can see updates pretty good in there, and they give you some email notifications for the big stuff, like they've received your cards, your grades have popped, your stuff is in the store. So it's getting better, but it really comes down to what items, again, in the process you hold most valuable. Is it just the cost? Is it the overall service? Is it some of the stuff that comes with it? That stuff you're going to have to weigh in your decision. And here, as we wrap up the slide, there are different conveniences and inconveniences with both services. A lot of them we've touched on, but here's just a quick review. With GameStop, you have to drive to drop off and pick up your cards. There's no submission forms, which is a positive, and there's no packaging or shipping, which some people really like. You pay up front, which to me is a disadvantage, and not every store does grading submissions. You do need to go to their website, type in the zip code that you will be leaving from, whether you want to leave from like your place of business or your home or whatever, and it's going to tell you what stores within a certain radius do it. There is no min-max for your bulk order, which to me is a really big advantage, especially for those of you viewers that might just have a small amount you want to submit. Maybe you have children that want to submit 2 or 3 cards a piece, and that makes a 6 to 10 card order. This is going to be by far your cheapest option and easiest option for those sort of situations. And with PSA, the cards are delivered to your door, so you don't have to drive around to get your cards. You get them brought right to your doorstep. You do have to complete your own submission forms, package, and ship your items. So that's an inconvenience for some people. I personally like it. I know my parallels very well. I want to make sure my cards get coded correctly. That should get fixed in research and development, but I like to really make that clean. I feel like the cleaner it is, the easier it gets through research. I could be wrong, but I just believe those little things make a difference. Packaging and shipping, I also like that. I feel like nobody's going to care about my cards more than me, so I take the time to really package them, really make sure they're packed nice and tight, and they're not going to move around. They're not going to be bouncing all over the place. And of course, I mentioned it 2 or 3 times, you pay when your grades pop. That is huge to me. When you're talking about submitting a huge amount of cards that might cost you $1,000 to $2,000, I don't want that money tied up for 3 months. I want it tied up for a few days. Then I get those cards back and I can start selling them right away and recover the money, at least in bulk, at least sell some of the big cards off and recover the majority of the money back right away within 1 to 2 weeks of the grades popping. Disadvantage is to get bulk pricing, you need a minimum 20 card order, which obviously we didn't need with GameStop. So to capitalize on the best pricing with PSA, you need at least 20 cards, and you're going to be spending upwards of $500 to do it. So those are the end of my thoughts and takeaways. And what I got from this video is pretty important, and what I'll be implementing as I go forward. I will be using GameStop to turn cards a little quicker. If there's some cards that I feel like I need to get them about a month quicker, I can't wait, I'm going to be using GameStop for that to try to time the market better. I might also use it for some experiments, and I'll kind of explain that in different videos. But PSA I'm going to continue to use for my standard bulk orders. I like paying when they pop. That's a big deal to me. If PSA ever changed that, I definitely would change my strategy probably and just go full on GameStop. So, and it would definitely slow down how many cards I'm able to have out at a time. I just don't want to tie up that much revenue. Other than that, the video itself was comparing how to get your cards from your home, graded by PSA, back into your home at the lowest possible price. And this experiment determined that whether it's TCG or sports cards, that using GameStop with the current pricing is the cheapest. It's going to be the cheapest until you get to card number 96 in the TCG order. Then it's slightly cheaper to use PSA. So most people obviously are not submitting 96 cards at a time. So that said, in summary, when looking at cost alone per card, GameStop is cheaper, which is wild to me that that would be the case. And PSA actually is more expensive to use directly. It is crazy, but that's really mainly because of the shipping to get it home. And I don't think that bothers PSA at the end of the day, because they want you to sell with them and they want you using their offers program where you don't necessarily have your card shipped. But if you made it this far in the video, I really appreciate you sticking with me, listening to it, looking at the charts and graphs, going in deep into the numbers with me here. I hope I was able to give you a better understanding in the costs involved with using both PSA Direct and GameStop drop-off service for grading. If you're subscribed already, you're a real one. If you're not, I hope I was able to earn it with this video. Drop a sub. There'll be weekly videos coming, so you'll definitely want to get on the train before it's full. With that out of the way, a quick like, comment, all that good stuff that'll get this in front of people that will also enjoy it. But that's all I've got for today. So until next time, we'll see ya.